The whole idea of before you get a limbs, you really need to plan out where you're going because you need to know where you're going before you get there.
That's
There is
right.
no one limbs, no one size fits all. Not all labs are the same.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Confiance LIMS webinar series. My name is Ken Ochi, Manager of Global Marketing at Confiance, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar alongside Joe Reyneso, who is our Senior Director of Revenue Marketing. How are you doing today, Joe?
I'm doing very well, Ken. How are you doing, sir?
Just fine and peachy. Thank you very much. Today's webinar is entitled Lab Economics, the Cost of Not Being Automated. Now, in this episode, we'll be connecting with Confiance's very own Dr. Richard Danielson about the importance of scoping out your laboratory goals when evaluating a LIMS solution. We'll also dive into some of the benefits of automation and how you can set your lab up for success when integrating your instruments with LIMS technology. Dr. Danielson earned his PhD from the University of California at Berkeley and has been published over 60 times in the field of environmental and public health microbiology. He's served as a laboratory director for 22 years before coming on board at Confiance, and his previous clients included water and wastewater utilities, state and federal public health and regulatory agencies, the Department of Defense, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. And just say that Dr. Danielson knows what he's talking about. He has extensive experience in laboratory operations, and we're definitely very excited and happy that he's here today to share his perspective on some of the hidden costs of lab automation and the cost of not being automated. Dr. Danielson, welcome to our webinar.
Hey, Ken. Hi, Joe. How you guys doing today?
Very good. Welcome, Dr. Danielson.
Yeah, thank you.
Doing very well, Dr. Danielson. And, to get started here, I wanted to ask a question of you that comes up many times with many of our prospective clients. And that is, what are the primary goals associated with implementing a LIMS solution, and how does that translate into the scientific work that lab managers do on a daily basis?
Sure. Well, first of all, what you want to do is have, a system that's going to be easy to use and available to everyone in your staff that eliminates paper. Paperwork is the killer. We all sit there at the workbench filling out page after page, and it's just really a waste of time. So the idea of a LIMS primarily is to enhance efficiency. You want to reduce transcription errors, and you want to take advantage of the automations that a LIMS can provide. This can be anything from, scheduling your staff and clients, sample tracking through the lab. You want to automate data collection with a robust quality system that will lead for better verification and approval, and just overall streamline reporting and document control.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that answer and insight, Dr. Danielson. I now want to turn it over to Joe. He has a question he'd like to ask you as well.
Dr. Danielson, that's very much aligned with what we're hearing in the marketplace. So, question for you, what does a properly scoped out LIMS implementation look like? Why is it so difficult for laboratories to execute a pilot framework? And how can they be more successful when involving other stakeholders?
Yeah, this is really, really a great question, because the whole idea of before you get a LIMS, you really need to plan out where you're going, because you need to know where you're going before you get there, okay?
That's
There
right.
is no one LIMS, no one size fits all. Not all labs are the same. Whether you're looking to buy a LIMS for the first time, or you want to introduce new technology to what you already have, you need to define your current needs, and especially the pain points. What is not working? How can a LIMS automation help you? So this means you want to develop a network and establish a system that everyone can use. To your last point, how can it be more successful when involving stakeholders? Again, really critical question. You want to involve anyone who's going to be involved in the LIMS, so that way you get their feedback up front. I can say from personal experience, when I first implemented a LIMS, my staff was very leery of the whole situation, but by bringing them in and having them part of the process, you get better buy-in up front. They then feel like they were part of it, and then they're not so recalcitrant when it comes time to possibly switching systems, right? And this is especially critical if you're going to move from one LIMS to another. You really want people's input, so that way they feel like, yeah, this is mine. They get ownership as well.
I love that. So what I hear you saying there is start with the end in mind, right? Start from the end and work your way back to the ultimate goal of having a successful.
Absolutely. Yeah, good point. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. And then obviously your champion network, right? So having your champions on site that are actually going to be fingers on keyboard doing the integration and the implementations and pulling the reports and doing the sample tracking and tracing, having those individuals involved in the process early on, as well as maybe even your IT department. Does that sound like a good stakeholder involved in that decision making?
Absolutely. Again, you want to have everyone, including IT, admins, because you may have some permissions that you want to give to your administrative staff. They don't have to have, their hands on the bench information directly, but you want to give them read-only possibilities to come in and see the information, get the information out they want. And again, this can be an automated function. If there are certain reports that need to go to certain administrative people on a regular basis, this kind of activity can all be automated. And so you need to identify what those are. Again, as an ex-lab director, lab manager person, not having to sit down on a weekly, monthly, whatever basis all the time and have to take time to put those relatively simple reports together, but still time consuming. If you can automate that process and get that information out to people on a regular basis, then, that's just a huge saver overall.
100%. I love that. This is great. I appreciate your detailed, thoughtful replies here. Ken, shoot it right back over to you.
Thank you very much, Joe. And, Dr. Danielson, when you're talking about, what a LIMS implementation looks like, and obviously provided a lot of detail there on what prospective clients who are looking at LIMS should expect when they go into an implementation. For many of the attendees in today's webinar, they're also interested in being able to build a business case for acquiring a LIMS. So with that in mind, it'd be great if you could go over some of the benefits of automating and integrating through today's more modern context. And before I let you go on here, obviously we know that there are some, pretty obvious benefits that you'll go through here, but I'm sure that there are other benefits that our attendees will want to know about as they build that business case.
Okay, so justification, right? I mean, I had to justify my LIMS purchase to, my, at the time, board of directors. You may have to do it to a plant supervisor and to a city council. So sitting down, again, doing that initial assessment is important. But then what are those areas that you want to be able to hit upon? Well, I mean, so as I mentioned before, some of the best benefits for automating, I already mentioned error reduction, getting rid of transcription errors, increased efficiency. But what that means is that you might be able to have your increase in sample throughput. You don't have your people sitting there writing things down all the time. You get better resource utilization. If you even do something as simple as, say, barcoding, right? So even up front, being able to put as much information up front into the LIMS automatically, so that way you're only entering that information, the first time. And then on sample login, you're basically you're just like booping in samples, right? Boop, boop, boop. They're coming in. That information is being uploaded and can be tracked and traced through the lab. For instrument integrations, you can either do this in a one-way or two-way communication. This is a tremendous time saver because now as the instrument is collecting data, it's sending that directly to the LIMS. In two-way communication, the LIMS can even communicate with your instruments ahead of time. So that way, a lot of the input your analyst would have to go through is automatically being put in there. Streamlined data review and reporting, quality control measures are being tracked, as well as alerting you when there are questionable results. Let's see. I mean, it's almost an endless list, right?
Right.
Using wireless technology now is becoming used more and more, especially now we have a much more stringent regulatory environment in the lab where you have to be monitoring, all your refrigerators, freezers, oven, incubators, water baths. All these things have to be tracked. There's wireless technology out there now that can be used to do all that for you. And the important part about that is automatic alerting when something starts to go wrong with those devices, right? And again, going back to the regulatory environment, many of the requirements in quality system reporting and documentation can be automated. So you're not, once every year or every 2 years scampering about the laboratory, trying to gather all the paperwork. It's all going to be there in the LIMS. So that makes it so much simpler to be able to handle when you have audits. And so with all this increased efficiency and automation, you can increase your throughput, maybe even introduce new services to your clients, and that all contributes to your return on investment.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Wow, it never occurred to me some of the individual aspects of a laboratory day-to-day work life that can actually be automated. That is enlightening.
There is one thing I wanted to mention or wanted to bring up here. Dr. Danielson talked about return on investment. And Dr. Danielson, I know for our attendees out there who are going to be justifying a LIMS, putting together a business case, I'm sure the question comes up, can you help me understand how I can calculate that a return on investment?
Oh, sure. Well, obviously it's going to be a big expense. And so you need to know what those costs are. Now, I mentioned a laundry list of things for time saving as far as that goes, but you also can use online, for example, there are return on investment calculators for software, just in general, not just for LIMS, but just in general. And especially if you're trying to look at whether you want to go like on premise versus a cloud situation. And that way, and these calculators are kind of put together so that way you have all the upfront costs. So for example, for on-premise, you would want to include the time your IT department spends or the time that maybe, and if you don't have an IT department, and a lot of small labs don't, you might have someone designated as the champion of the LIMS. Well, what's their time away from revenue generating work going to cost you? Right? You may have to have upgrade of equipment, servers, internal client computers. So all these things have to go into that calculation. On the other side, for cloud, for example, then you have monthly subscription and licensing, depending on what you have in the LIMS. So there's the license for the LIMS itself, but you may also have other ancillary enhancements that may also carry license fees. So these are all things that you can put into one of these calculators. And then you also have to think about what are the opportunities that you have with a LIMS. So as I mentioned earlier, you might have, with greater efficiency, you might be able to offer more services and or even open up whole new lines of business with people now having a little more time. And then, of course, there are the ongoing tax implications. This is tax season after all, right? So we have to keep that in mind. And so, these are operational costs. And so you can get some tax benefit as well. Don't take my word for it. Talk to your tax guy, okay, or gal. But there are benefits you can get for there as well.
I love that. So it's basically minimizing non-revenue generating activities in the lab to increase efficiency and open up more opportunities to increase the throughput in the laboratory. Yep. That's awesome. That's wonderful. So it just occurred to me in the previous riff that there are so many labs out there today that are still working, as you say, out of paper, and just basically manually tracing their activities from beginning to end. Can you kind of share with me in your experience, Dr. Danielson, why digital transformation is so far removed from the laboratory space? Why hasn't it touched this industry like it has other industries that we're aware of?
Well, I mean, I would say honestly, it's going to come down to cost. It depends on the laboratory, of course. I would say, again, from my own experience, margins in the laboratory space is small.
Mhm.
And so you really need to be able to invest in those things that are going to give you, an edge on that margin. And I know it's a big cost up front, but you really need to be looking down the road when you invest in a LIMS. And this is an investment, and it is going to pay benefit down the road, but you have to be able to map that out. And I know it's difficult if a small utility lab goes in and says, it's going to cost X amount, and they put that in front of an already strapped, maybe city or a plant manager or whatever, and they just see a number. Okay. So it's really important to show that full picture. Don't just do it's not a portrait. It's a landscape picture. Okay. Right. You want to see out there more than just what's in front of you. And in the long run, it's going to benefit everybody. Not, everybody sees that, oh, it's going to benefit the lab. Everyone benefits from it in the long run. And I think that's been proven time and time again.
100%. That's awesome. I really appreciate that candor. Thank you, Doctor. And I guess to close this off, where do you see this laboratory industry moving, and how is Confiance helping to move it forward from your perspective?
Well, again, I think automation is the key. And, just taking not only the mundane day-to-day tasks, but also really the complicated tasks. And all those things can be automated by a LIMS. And so it's up to the laboratory to take advantage of them. Another thing that happens, I see, is people will get a LIMS and they'll do their little bit, but they don't stretch it. Look and see what your LIMS can do. Take full advantage of what it can do for you. And that means that you need to set aside the time. So it's not just budgeting money. You need to set aside that time to say, this is what I have. Here are the tools I have. I have to maximize that. And so again, this goes into part of that justification, and you're setting up when you sit down with your higher ups, and you have to be able to say, okay, we're going to spend the money on it, but I also have to have the time to make this work and get the most out of it for everybody.
Right.
From the perspective of Confiance, what I see is we're developing an intuitive user experience, so that way they get highly trusted and high quality data. And we listen to our customers. This has been something I've always been impressed with this organization overall, is that we get feedback from our clients and our customers, and we put that into our new versions. We're constantly evolving our software. And from what I understand, there's going to be a big evolution coming up near the end of the year with Confiance. And I'm really looking forward to how that's going to impact the lab industry.
That's fantastic. Wow, this has been an info-packed session. Dr. Danielson, thank you so much for meeting with us today and for sharing your experiences with our audience.
Sure, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And Ken, thank you for the introduction. A very warm welcome to the team here at Confiance. And to our audience, thank you for tuning into this episode from start to finish. At Confiance, we're driven by the mission to provide automated lab management and data that our customers can act on to build trusted products and a thriving planet. The result of a recently announced merger between Accelerated Technology Laboratories and Quality Systems International, Confiance offers LIMS solutions that empower your lab managers and quality managers to accurately gather, analyze, report data, work efficiently and intuitively, meet compliance goals, and exceed business objectives. If you enjoyed this episode, you can stay up to date on this and future recordings by following our LinkedIn company page. Drop us a comment, like, or share. We'd love to hear from you and answer all of your messages, so don't hesitate to reach out. Want to learn even more? Request a demo at Confiance.io. Take care, everyone.